I know how numb we've become, but it's not normal. No other candidate for the presidency has ever had to pause his campaign to defend himself in multiple courts. And I would like to point out that in all 7 of his cases, no one doubts that he did these things. We're just sitting around patiently waiting to find out if the wheels of justice will grind fast enough for there to be any consequences. And the media is covering it like it's any other political story, like it's all horse race.
Now, as you can see, there is no love lost between late night host Stephen Colbert and former President Donald Trump. And we're pretty much at a point where the opposition now understands that they can't beat Donald Trump in court. Now, me personally, I really don't think that Donald Trump did half the stuff that they're trying to charge him with. I think that this is complete leveraging of the Department of Justice, the DOJ, the Biden administration, Kamala Harris. They're all leveraging every tool that they have to come after Donald Trump because they can't beat Donald Trump in the polls. Look at the CNN polls. Look at MSNBC. Look at ABC's Ipsos polls. Look at university polls. They cannot beat Donald Trump, so they're desperate. They have to try to take him to court. They have to try to lock up Donald Trump. And I think, and it's really concerning, that I feel like if they were to actually lock up Donald Trump, we could see riots. The narrative has switched and they're left with remarks like calling him weird or old. Now, Kaitlyn Collins is another never Trumper who guests on Stephen Colbert's show. So Collins is a CNN anchor who was made viral by Donald Trump during a very heated moment on their network. Check this out.
Why you held on to those documents when you knew the federal government was seeking them and then had given you a subpoena to return them.
Are you ready? Are you ready? Can I talk?
Yeah, what's the
answer? Do you mind?
I would like for you to answer the question.
Okay, it's very simple to answer.
That's why I asked it.
I swear she's literally just trying to be an absolute BI, like on purpose. Like she knows what she's doing. You know, she doesn't want Donald Trump to talk and she's trying to get up under his skin, period, point blank.
It's very simple you're a nasty person, I'll tell you.
So Collins was supposed to be the mediator here, but it actually sounded like she wanted to have a debate with Donald Trump. Now, CNN hasn't been the most unbiased network out there. Let's be honest, guys. In fact, it's been quite the opposite. They clearly have anchors that have it out for Donald Trump. Carolyn Levitt, Donald Trump's press secretary, was on the show some time ago with CNN host Casey Hunt. Here's what happened in that interview.
First of all, it takes someone 5 minutes to Google Jake Tapper, Donald Trump, to see that Jake Tapper has consistently,
we're going to stop this interview if you're going to keep
President
attacking
Trump
my colleagues.
Ma'am,
I'm going to stop this interview if you continue to attack my colleagues. I would like to talk about Joe Biden and Donald Trump, who you work for.
Yes.
If you are here to speak on his behalf, I am willing to have this conversation.
I am stating facts that your colleagues have stated in the past.
Okay,
now,
I'm sorry, guys. We're going to come back out to the panel. Caroline, thank you very much for your time. You are welcome to come back at any point. She is welcome.
Oh my God, that anchor is just so freaking condescending. I mean, just absolutely ridiculous. But what I will though say, I think it's very clear why Donald Trump hired Carolyn Levitt to have on his team. I think it's very clear. I mean, Carolyn Levitt offers tremendous assets to Donald Trump's team. As press secretary, I mean, you can't beat Carolyn Levitt. And I think it's very, very clear, even at this point, while Donald Trump is not the current president of the United States, Carolyn Levitt has Donald Trump's back.
So come back and speak about Donald Trump, and Donald Trump will have equal time to Joe Biden when they both join us now at later this week in Atlanta for this debate.
Now, you might have noticed that her mic was cut off there at the end. So yeah, CNN proves time and time again that they're very much leaning to the left. They don't like what you're saying? Off with your mic. Which makes this next clip that much more hilarious, as Collins was taken aback by what the audience did. Check this out.
And they were kind of riding high, wind at their backs. The question was not if they would win, but by how much. And it's totally changed since then. And I think what we really got at last week, and is still the case now from what we're hearing, is Trump has kind of been thrown on his heels by this. And he's not really sure how to go after Vice President Harris. He knew his attack lines on President Biden. He really has struggled with how to go after someone who's 20 years younger than him, who is a different gender, a different race. It's kind of been this moment where he has not been able to coalesce around a single attack line.
Now, I gotta interrupt. Kaitlyn Collins has beautiful hair. I mean, she has amazing hair. And I don't know if she's using Pantene Pro V. Beautiful. Now, I will say, though, her facial expressions, sometimes, to me, she looks like a dude. I don't know why it is, but sometimes she does.
I know you guys are objective over there, that you just report the news as it is. CNN makes it, and I know
That's supposed to be a laugh line?
I wasn't supposed to be, but
what's funny though is that the audience laughed. Now this is a mainly Democratic audience, and yet the Democratic audience still laughs at the fact that Stephen Colbert called out CNN for strictly reporting the news, when I think it's very clear that the American people realize that there's a lot more twisting and manipulation of the news reporting that CNN does.
oh, I know CNN makes it, and I know
That's supposed to be a laugh line?
I wasn't supposed to be, but I guess it is.
Before we even get to how the audience laughed here, it's also funny how they're acting as if switching their presidential nominee during the campaign period was a common act done by both parties. They knew for a fact that President Joe Biden was going to get smashed in the ballots, so they had to call in their ringer because she's going to at least do a little bit better, or so they thought. But did you see the awkwardness between Collins and Colbert there? They didn't even know how to respond. And to make matters even worse, they acknowledged the laughter, which means that this probably wasn't supposed to happen at all. This was all off script. But you gotta admit that calling CNN objective is kind of ludicrous. And it's highly possible that this audience was mostly comprised of liberals. They're not going to have conservatives seated in a show where they have a liberal host from CNN show up. And if you've been in any of these shows, you would know that there's a certain level of control that's maintained throughout the show. It just got to a point where even they were aware that Colbert was speaking out of his you-know-what. Now, Senator Tom Scott exposed Collins in a recent interview where the senator repeatedly answered the same question about Vice President Kamala Harris.
When is she going to come on Kaitlyn Collins' show or Jake Tapper's show or go on 60 Minutes or have an unscripted press conference and answer to the American people where she stands on the issues that matter to them, on whether or not they can pay the bills on July 31st at the end of the month, whether or not they're going to be able to pay them next month, whether or not we're going to have another 10 million illegal aliens in our country under a Kamala Harris presidency.
We have had that conversation about her policy views, but how does her changing her views on her policy justify having the Republican nominee questioning her race? Does that increase or decrease your party's chances of winning in November?
Well, Kaitlyn, you haven't had that conversation with Kamala Harris because she's been hiding out.
I want to have this conversation with you, Senator.
Just like Joe Biden hid out before her.
Isn't it funny? Isn't it funny how these CNN representatives, these CNN anchors and hosts clearly have a biased position? They're defending presidential candidates, nominees, whatever you want to call them, not reporting just the news. That's not what they're doing.
And my point is, when are you and the rest of the media going to demand that Kamala Harris come out and answer questions in an unscripted format about where she stands for this country, as opposed to continuing to focus on what Donald Trump said today? 4 years ago, Joe Biden said, if you don't vote for him, you ain't black. Could you imagine a more insulting comment? Joe Biden is presuming to judge the political views of 1/8 of our fellow citizens based on their skin color. Did you ever ask Kamala Harris to condemn his remarks?
There are
Did you ever
33.
ask him or ask her if that was racist?
This is a question. You're a Republican senator, so I want to ask you about the Republican nominee.
Did you ask Kamala Harris? Kaitlyn, did you ask Kamala Harris why she's willing to serve as vice president for a man she essentially called racist and a segregationist? Have you or anyone else in the media asked Kamala Harris those questions, Kaitlyn?
Senator, trust me, I covered the Biden-Harris White House. We obviously have asked for her to come on, but my question is for you about this. Donald Trump's pick for VP once questioned whether he was America's Hitler.
And that, folks, is CNN and Kaitlyn Collins in a nutshell. Now, if you watch this interview, she was asking the same question using different formats for like 6 minutes. And this isn't even available on CNN's channel. I had to find this on Senator Scott's own channel because CNN won't post one of their hosts getting cooked like this. So this kind of reminds me of J.D. Vance's interview with CNN that I covered in a previous video. And very similar to how they treated Scott, Vance was also bombarded with the same line of questions regarding Kamala Harris and her race, meaning that they would rather talk about that than the fact that the VP has changed her mind about different policies that she talked about during the 2020 presidential run.
Why do you all keep questioning her identity? She's always identified as a black woman. She is biracial. She has a Jamaican father and an Indian mother. She's always identified as both. Why are you questioning that?
Well, George, first of all, this is something that's actually a conversation throughout social media right now. There were a lot of people who are trying to figure this out. But again, that's a side issue, not the main issue. The main issue.
Sir, 1 second. You just did it. You just did it again.
Of the United States.
Why do you insist on questioning her racial identity?
You want me to talk?
I want you to answer my question.
George, now that you're done yelling at me, let me answer. He talked about it on the stage yesterday in Atlanta for what, 2 minutes? He spent more than 35, 40 minutes going after her record, talking about how radical of a senator that she was. She was the most liberal senator in the United States, in the United States Senate. That is a fact. He talked about the job that she did as vice president of the United States, a job, I will add, which has been a failure for the American people. I know you guys like to glom on to this that he talks about in jest or in a serious manner for about a minute or so, but what you do not cover is the litany of failures of Kamala Harris. That's what you're not covering, George.
So questioning somebody's racial identity for a couple minutes is okay?
George, I'm going to tell you again, he brought it up. AP is the one that wrote the headline when she first came in to the United States Senate. Didn't talk about her being black, talked about her being the first Indian American senator. AP brought that up. I mean, George, we could have this conversation for the entire segment, but none of this matters to the American people.
So make sure you guys check that one out because we really need to be informed about what they're trying to do through mainstream media. Anyway, as always, thanks so much for liking the video. Thank you for subscribing to the channel and sharing this video. I'll see you on the next one.